economy across the United States of America is in some pretty rough circumstances. And so we've been working very hard to try to improve them, try to bring them up, try to create more jobs, and make the situation much more effective. The unemployment rate across the United States now is 9.7%. We're substantially lower than that here, 8.7% here. Nevertheless, my objective has been to do everything I can to provide economic growth and to use the power of the federal government to be involved in that as much as possible. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, I've been able to bring in substantial amounts of funding here that will upgrade the economy, create jobs, and maintain the existing companies that we have, maintain them strongly. Over the course of the last few years, we've been able to bring in more than $200 million over the course of this operation here for businesses across the region, strengthening them, making them better, maintaining the jobs that they have, and increasing additional jobs. In addition to that, I've been focused also on this wonderful college that is here. And we're working with them to upgrade the quality of technical operations there, particularly things like solar energy, things of that nature. I've been able to bring in $8 million just recently into the college here so that they can be stronger, more powerful, and more effective. All of these things are now working very well. The whole economic situation here is getting better and stronger, and we are much better than most of the states across this country. There are few that are as good as we are, and of course the national unemployment rate is much higher than it is here. So we have a lot more to do. Then there's a lot more things that I'm engaged in. The Front Street operation here is something that I've obtained money for, more than $4 million. That project is going to be opened up in the next couple of years. A lot of good work is going to be involved there, and that's going to increase the quality of this city here. Also, another thing that I've done is to upgrade Route 17 and make it part of the interstate highway system, I-86. That project in and of itself is now going to bring in, starting next year, $500 million. $500 million, which is going to generate a huge amount of work and a lot of employment. Does that mean I'm over? Or
20 seconds.
Pardon?
20
seconds. And that is going to bring in a lot of employment and a lot of work that we need to do. It's just one other example of the kinds of things that I've been doing and been doing successfully. Just upgrading that Route 17 by the introduction of the legislation that I put in, getting it done, and now getting this operation moving so forward. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you, to do everything I can, to bring in all the powerful circumstances here and all the money to stimulate and generate jobs and to maintain the power of the economy here in this region. Thank you very much. In the context of all of these issues that we're dealing with is what happened during the previous 8 years. That's the most important thing you have to remember. Contrary to what was said here just a few moments ago, is that of the debt that we have now, $10 trillion were established by 2008. All of that in the context of the previous administration. That's something that we all need to remember. That's the big problems that we have. All of the big economic problems that we have now were created during the previous administration. And part of that had to do with this tax cut. This tax cut, which was set forth in 2001, had one very effective element of it. We now have almost 25% of the economy in this country going into the hands of the wealthiest 1% of the population of this country. If you want that to happen, I think that you're making a big mistake. The opposition that I have wants it to happen. And he's making a number of very big mistakes, including failing to mention that the debt that we have, almost all of it, $10 trillion, was created during the previous administration. We need tax cuts for middle-income people. We need more income for middle-income people. We need tax cuts for small businesses. Just in the past 2 years, I voted 40 times for tax cuts for small businesses. Very few of that went to the Senate. We were able to get the Senate to pass on at least a few. And as a result of that, we have now seen tax cuts for small businesses go down. It would have been a lot more if the tax cuts that we put for small businesses, that I supported, would have been passed by the Senate, and then it would have been signed by the governor. We got a lot more to do. We got to recognize what the real problems are and how they came about. Do is just think about history, not long, ancient history, but just fairly modern history. What our economy has always done, what wise governments have always done, when we started to have an economic recession, when the income started to go down for one reason or another, and it's going down now because of the activities of the previous administration, that huge debt of $10 trillion, the exportation of jobs outside of this country, the lowering of jobs here as a result of that, all of those things need to be dealt with. So we've got to be positive about what we're doing now, and we have to be able to invest in our internal needs. That's what I have been doing here, and I have had a very positive effect on the economy here. I have saved a lot of jobs. I have generated a lot of jobs. I have strengthened the university here in many ways. And we are developing new technologies as well, particularly solar technology, which is something that is going to be critically important for the future of this country. We're now importing more than 70% of the oil that we use. We're paying huge amounts of prices. All of that has got to change. We can't be dependent upon the outside for the energy that we need. We've got to be generating most of it here. So solar energy is another thing that we need to do. All of the things that I've mentioned are generating jobs. A lot of that has to do with the stimulus bill, the investment program that we were able to get passed. And we were able to get that passed in the context of this administration for the first time in many, many years. Now, the previous administration, it was blocked by the Congress in the administration prior to that, and by several administrations before that. There wasn't any initiative to pour in money here, the money that we need. The wisest thing to do is to spend our money on the needs here. If you generate money here, you generate growth, you stimulate the economy, you generate jobs. All of that is extremely powerful and positive. We've got to be wise about the way we spend it, not outside of this country, here inside our own country. It's jobs, it's good for the economy, it does a lot of very positive things. This kind of legislation has been tried to be passed for many, many years, going back to the early part of the last century. This is the first time it's been successful. It's not nearly as good as it should be, it's not nearly as strong or accessible as it should be, but a lot of the strength, a lot of the accessibility will take place over time, beginning in 2012, beginning in 2014. But right now, it does a number of positive things. For example, if you have a young person in your health insurance in your family, instead of running out of that health insurance for that young person at the age of 21, they'll have that health insurance now for another 5 years, until the age of 26. Also, the health care availability is going to increase. More and more people will be able to get good quality health care. Also, in the context of health care, people who have health care problems are not going to be able to be denied health insurance. They're going to be able to get the health insurance and the health care that they need. And all of these things are very obvious and should be put into play. Also, there are provisions in here for the accessibility of health insurance for small businesses, to make small businesses be able to provide health insurance for the people that work for them, and to be able to provide it for them economically and effectively, and get the tax cuts that they deserve in the process of providing this health insurance for the employees that work for them. So this bill is not perfect by any means. There are a lot of things that could be done better. Single-payer health care is my choice. That's the bill that I introduced. But the fact of the matter is, it does a lot of good for a lot of good people, for a lot of people across this country, and that goodness is going to improve over the course of the next several years. Keep that in mind. It's going to be very good. It's probably the most important thing that we do in this country, and I think probably in other countries as well. But it's the critically important issue here. If we're going to have a positive future, we need to have good, high-quality education. This is something to which I am directly devoted and have done everything I can to sustain it and strengthen it. The educational system in our government needs to be independent, needs to be by itself. It shouldn't be, as my opponent wants it, to be joined with something else to make it weaker and less likely to be more effective. I have also led the issue in Washington to get $10 billion in emergency funding for education across this country. Huge amounts of that money is now flowing into this state. It has upgraded the quality of education, it has saved teachers, and it has done very positive things all across the board in the context of that education. And in addition to that, as I mentioned, I have brought in $8 million to the State University College here in Binghamton. All of these things are critically important. I'm devoted to education. We all need to be devoted to it. It's the most critical thing that we need to do for the future of our country. One of the most important aspects of the economy in many ways. As you all know, it was put into effect in 1935 in the context of the Great Depression. If it hadn't been put into effect in 1935, the money went out in 1937, an awful lot of people would have been deeply depressed and their lives would have been ended much more soon. Social Security is critically important. We need to maintain it. All of this is very important, and that's what we're trying to do. What some people are trying to do is to privatize Social Security. We had the former President of the United States in 2005 come in and say we should privatize Social Security. Fortunately, we were able to overcome that, even though we were in the minority at that point. We were able to stop that from happening. You can just imagine if it had been privatized with the recession that came about, which began in 2007, just 2 years later, that the Social Security system would be deeply depressed. Social Security right now is secure. If nothing better were to happen, if no jobs were created, nothing positive, it is secure till 2027. 2027. We need to make sure that Social Security stays strong and powerful and effective, and we need to make sure that a number of things don't happen, like the exportation of jobs out of this country, which has lowered Social Security's power in America. Social Security needs to be maintained. This guy is wrong about so many things. I don't know whether he's just mistaken or he's intentionally lying about it. But the frack act that we have is very big issue to deal with. Back in 1974, legislation was passed to make sure that the drilling issue was not going to contaminate people's water supplies or do other things that are going to be harmful. The Bush administration eliminated them. Beginning in 2004, and then in 2005, they tore it out. Now it's gone. You have drilling in many places across this country where their water supplies are being contaminated, where air supplies are being contaminated, where you've had huge amounts of toxic materials flowing up into the air and people being moved from miles away from that situation. He wants that to happen here in New York. That's ridiculous. I have introduced this legislation to reinstate a very simple provision that says if you're going to drill for